Lieutenant Colonel Banks.
So I'm gonna have our beautiful son flip the thing because I can't flip and talk. And I'm much more of a talker. I will glance at the slides because the slides are more about where we were and where we are today. And then I really just kind of want to tell you some stories and how we take care of soldiers and airmen in the state of Connecticut. So I was a direct commission, which means one day I was a clinical social worker, private practice. Somebody said, maybe you could raise your hand. I said, okay. I didn't know what that meant. My recruiter got my uniform together. I swore in and I walked into Westover. And all I could think is, please don't let anyone salute me because I hadn't learned how to do that yet, right? So I came in as a lieutenant and I was supposed to head off to salute school within 1 year. That's the agreement. I was off on a training mission and I got injured. And I fractured the bones in the bottom of my foot. So let me just explain what that meant. It took me 7 years to go to my initial commissioning school. So in your initial commissioning school, you learn how to salute, you learn the history, and as an officer, you really learn how to lead, speak, guide, and motivate. And what is your personal style? Some people lead from fear, some people lead by trying to be empathetic. And for me, what I learned about myself is that I want to do what everyone else is doing, and I want them to do it with me because it's the right thing to do. So I was a social worker there for 3 years, just a weekend warrior, which meant that I kept on having to remember, again, how to salute, how to wear my uniform. And then somebody called me up and said, hey, there's this job with the Connecticut National Guard. And I was like, what's the National Guard? They're like, you know, like they fly on the weekend. I said, well, okay, I could do that. So they had a full-time job running a sexual assault program. There had never been a full-time asset yet. And if we go forward, we're going to talk a little bit about why it became so important that the government invested about 100 grand a year for every state and every wing to bring on people like me to run a sexual assault prevention and response program. So if you know anything about humanity, sexual assault has been around since the beginning of time. I am sure there are some caveman and some cave female that had what was non-consensual sex. And it's been in the military, but as we get more and more females, we can't just talk about female sexual assault victims. We also have a male sexual assault victims, and especially when you get into all male units. And then there are things that are hazing versus for sexual gratification. But as there became more and more women, because while it's 1 in 4 women and 1 in 11 men, it's more women who are willing to vocalize that they have been a victim due to more stigma for male victims. They realized that women were getting bad conduct, bad paper. They were being discharged for personality disorders, for self-medication, for PTS, now we don't call it D. And they were expressing more and more about why they were getting out. And nobody wanted to believe them. If you came out and said that you were a victim of sexual assault, you were the problem. It was just regret sex. You knew what you were getting. Because like familiar sexual assault, like incest, 93% of all sexual assaults in the military are done by somebody that we know. So we train all day long to trust your brother and your sister. They got your six, they got your back, your wingman, your battle buddy. And then that person rapes you. So like incest, there is a greater violation of trust. And so why did you go to their room? Because I thought they were my brother. Why did you drink with them? Because I was thirsty. Why were you wearing this uniform? Because it makes me look hot. Because I'm actually hot. I used to travel with this other major, and I'll say his name, Jeff Highland. We traveled all over the world. We were like the traveling road show of Don't Rape Your Fellow Airmen. And we used to go, and all those times we stayed at the same hotel, and every one of those times I had to go to his room to wake him up. I had to get him dressed. Like, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. And every night he drank. And in all those times, we traveled about 160 days a year for about 7 years. I was never sexually assaulted. And I always say it's because I thought of him as a eunuch and so did his wife, but then his wife left him and it wasn't funny, but now he's remarried, so I use that joke again. So what I kept realizing though, is that if something bad had happened and I went to go report it, the conversation would go something like this. Why were you in his hotel room? Why were you drinking beer? Why were you sitting on the couch watching a movie with him? Don't you know that you should have protected yourself before you were a victim of a crime? Well, I drive really nice German cars. Why? Because they make really nice German cars, and I spend way too much money on buying my nice German car. And I love this Korean restaurant in New Haven. Anyone ever been to Seoul in New Haven? Best restaurant there is. So if I park my brand new Audi in front of Seoul, and I walk out there and it's gone, and I call law enforcement, I'm going to expect them to try to get my car back. And I'm not going to expect the conversation to go like, hey, why'd you buy a $60,000 car? You parked it in an area you knew it could be stolen. Obviously you wanted it stolen. But that's how we treat survivors of sexual assault. So back in about 2006, there was a whole bunch of stuff going on in the government. So there had been Tailhook. Anyone here know about Tailhook, right? Then there was Aberdeen. Then there was the Air Force Academy. Here, we'll keep going. So these are kind of the things that were going on. And then in 2006, they convened a meeting that said every branch of service needs a sexual assault response coordinator. And in 2008 was the first, the Invisible War was another one of those big changes. 2008 is when the program stood up. Air Force was the first branch to stand up their program, and now every single branch of the military has one. They call them a SAV or SAVI with the Navy, Army, we all have it. And what do? One, we teach. We teach everybody that everybody who looks like us aren't good. We cannot put the onus on preventing sexual assault on a victim before they become a victim. So we put it on all the bystanders, all the people who see something that should have said something, right? Like that whole campaign that we've now done, you know, click it and ticket, see something, say something. Well, we've created similar slogans for sexual assault because people see things all the time. You're at a party, people get drunk, and you see somebody trying to take somebody out, isolate them, remove them. So we try to make military members who we already know are that 1%er who raise their hand, who are willing to die for their country, but are sometimes uncomfortable saying something to their buddy like, hey, that person's drunk, leave them alone. We try to teach them and give them the skills on how to intervene. So the Army has a SHARP program, Air Force has a SAPR program. Both of them have spent billions of dollars with like people way smarter than me to come up with how to tell someone to stand up and do the right thing, right? So go forward again. Some of the things that are really important are the benefits you can get are based on what status you were in at the time of the crime. So if you're active duty, you're always in duty status. So if you were sexually assaulted, you can get a line of duty injury. That can open up services, NCAP pay, VA benefits. You can go to the vet center for military sexual trauma. The problem is reserves and guard. We are very rarely in active duty service. We are in Title 32 status 2 days a week, 2 weeks during the summer. Most of my sexual assaults in the state of Connecticut, and I have unfortunately had the honor of serving probably about 62 soldiers and airmen in the last 10 years, occurred out of duty status. December, Christmas parties. You guys are off duty, you're all together in the same unit, you trust these people, you've been dealing with them for years, you get drunk, you guys decide you're going to be smart, you're going to have a designated driver, where you're going to all get hotel rooms, and then somebody gets raped. July, AT, we're all together. We've just trained together for 2 weeks. Now all of a sudden you are my best friend. I didn't really know you last year, but now you're my best friend. And at the end of AT, I'm really hot and tired, and I'm going to go get drunk, and then I get sexually assaulted. So the things that we know are 93% people know each other. Between 87 and 90 are under the influence of alcohol. Alcohol obviously doesn't cause rape, but it creates a situation that allows a perpetrator who looks like me, dresses like me, to perpetrate a crime, to go forward. We do a lot of training. In the military, we train everything, right? There's a standard, there's a slide deck. I got a slide deck. The important thing thing is to not train this as we would a fire drill, right? We really need to get the kids to understand this is a crime, it will destroy your career, and for the victims to know that we will take care of them. So Connecticut is one of the only states in the country that has our own SVC, Special Victim Counsel. Not like the TV shows Law and Order. So National Guard created a program where they put like 12 lawyers on orders, and they put them in a region, 2 for each region. So Connecticut is part of Region 1. That's 8 states. So there's a lawyer to cover all the sexual assault victims for 8 states. But they can only cover it if they were sexually assaulted in military status. Well, what about our people who were raped at colleges? What about our people who were raped in their dating relationships? Or in any other situation? They're still ours. And if they're dealing with trauma and all this other stuff, how can they focus on their mission? So the prior general, the TAG, General Martin, decided that no matter what status they were in, we were going to take care of them. We were going to staff the courtrooms, we were going to negotiate with the prosecutors, we were going to be in helping them write their victim impact statements. We were going to be there at the beginning, the middle, and the end. So that that person, no matter what the outcome was, because only 2% of any sexual assault ends up with incarceration, no matter the legal outcome, they could get a strength perspective that they came, they told, they were believed, and supported. And that's how we retain the people. I have had, out of all those people, only one person left service after being a victim of sexual assault. And the reason why everyone else stayed is because they were believed, because they were supported. So we have a JAG who works for me, and he goes to every civilian case. Week there, they get a victim advocate, they get a SARC. We work with their commanders if they need time off. We work with mental health. We work in the community services. I use the vet center, Dr. Laura Hall for every veteran. And then I have found community partners for everybody who's in National Guard who doesn't have veteran status. If you go forward, these are the kind of things that we train about: healthy sexuality, why it's so important to stop the sexual harassment, because sexual harassment, in spite of what the Army says, doesn't actually cause sexual assault. But what it does do is it sets a tone in a unit where perpetrators think it's okay to act there. And victims feel less likely to come forward because they think that their crime won't be taken as seriously. So we work with a lot of commanders to kind of really set the tone that this is not okay here. Continue. All right. I don't need to read the definition of what sexual assault is. We define consent as not being the saying no, because people can not be in a position to say no for a multitude of reasons: rank, mental impairment, substance abuse, age. So what we do is, from the moment somebody comes forward, they have a right. If you go forward, there's something on the reporting options. Okay. So in the military, we have 2 options for reporting: unrestricted and restricted. The big difference is unrestricted opens up an investigation, which whichever law enforcement has the jurisdiction. Title 32, we have to use the local law enforcement where the crime occurred. We don't have UCMJ. Restricted gives them mental health services, referrals, a victim advocate, but no LOD and no investigation. And there are pros and cons to both. Initially, you had to choose immediately, and you only had 1 year to convert from a restricted to an unrestricted, but now there's no statute of limitation. You can come forward, get some help, and as you're healing and you may decide you now want to open up an investigation, we can do that. Because there's one thing that the military has that the civilian doesn't: no statute of limitation. You can be a victim of sexual assault and you can report 20 years later. My first case, 2 cases, were 20 years. The female waited until she was about to drop her retirement before coming forward. The only thing is, you have to have been in the military at the time of the sexual assault, and you have to still be in the military at the time that you report it. And taking that form that you fill out with your choice, that goes with you to the VA or the vet center, and it gets you services. So that's a really important form. We handle families now. The rule is they have to be 18 and older, so we'll handle dependents and spouses of military members. We support the adult parents when it's a child, but children are represented through TCF and through the courts. But we have supported a military member whose 13-year-old daughter was sexually assaulted. Okay, forward. I just tell you, I guess, about one case. It was in July. A group of people went out. The male soldier took them all to the bars. His uncle ran a bar. The females, all three of them, were underage. We have the assumption that something was placed in their drink, because all three were rendered unconscious, and he sexually assaulted all three, and he videotaped it.